It's already evening time, almost after 5 o'clock, and I'm going to talk on a special occasion, especially today. President Moon Jae-in, he bid farewell to citizens amid mixed reactions to his presidency, especially among conservative Korean citizens, with mixed reactions, but with mixed reactions from citizens without national unity. So his message was unwelcomed by conservative circle. I don't know whether leftist circle welcomed this message or not. Anyway, without national unity, he will be remembered as the president who promoted, national disunity based on a wrong ideological orientation, and also his, far leftist policies created a schism among Korean citizens. He emphasized especially on the ongoing duties of a new government from his government, especially regarding North Korean policies. And he also emphasized that he has achieved something that should be respected by the incoming government. But here my doubt continue, transferring his responsibility to the next administration, exaggerating his achievement. It only took place shortly before the start of a new administration tomorrow morning. And of the new administration will announce a new policies based on the people's voting orientations, and also president own personal characteristics on every field of economics, politics, North Korean policies, diplomatic issues. But as we all understand, President Moon Jae-in, outgoing President Moon Jae-in, he continuously emphasized the continuity of North Korean policies he has been pursuing since 5 years ago, and especially he told the people today that he did well, and he will be remembered as the president with some achievement. But who could agree to his message, especially his promise to be a president for all people, not only some people, to be a president for all people, and again, to make a worthy country. Those two has been in vain, fruitless. As we have watched the last presidential election, the evidence is 0.72% defeat of the Democratic Party of Korea. But the outgoing president said, I have never stepped into the ring and I didn't even open my mouth. So if you say we lost the election because of me, that's not right. How could you say this kind of things? And many citizens feel disturbed to watch the self-proclaimed candlelight president disappear from the stage within an entrenched narrow-mindedness to the last minute. What's the substance of candlelight government, candlelight spirit? What's the substance? In his retirement speech today, he said that he put down his heavy burden, but hoped to see the wish of the candlelight continue to bloom. What is the substance of candlelight? Well, it is very difficult to praise the achievement of the outgoing President Moon Jae-in's effort. The Moon Jae-in administration began in May 2017 with overwhelming support from the public after former President Park Geun-hye was impeached over corruption scandals that inspired nationwide candlelight vigils. But the Moon Jae-in administration also stumbled with soaring real estate prices, continuous scandals of his aid, handing over power to the opposition party after 5 years. But the reason for impeachment proved to be very, very groundless. So the substance of candlelight vigils will be remembered as something not so much trustworthy, not to be respected by our descendants in the future. It is very, very, difficult to hear what he said. He said that I am solemn about how much our government has lived up to, but even if our government does not achieve it, the people's desire for a country like country will never stop, he said. The wish of the candle will still bloom as our hope and power. He also said that next government will make effort to resume dialogue between the two Koreas, denuclearization and institutionalization of peace on the Korean Peninsula, saying peace is a condition of our survival and prosperity. But has he made any effort for real denuclearization? Except the fake, peace deals with North Korea without substance. Has he institutionalized the conditions for peace on the Korean Peninsula without any problems? Absolutely not. Peace, he mentioned today, is based on groundless, evidence, and that was just a political deal without substance. Fragile peace. That kind of peace is not worthy to the Koreans as of now. So, peace process he has pursued with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It proved to be fruitless and meaningless, and even it damaged our country's national security interest. He held 3rd summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and signed the Panmunjom Declaration, and also produced September 19th military agreement. But even after those kind of fake peace declaration, inter-Korean relations reached a deadlock after the breakdown of the second US-North Korea summit in Hanoi. Also this year, North Korea even staged 15 armed protests, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, short-range missiles. This is the result of his fake, peace process pushed during his presidency without real evidence that real peace rooted on the Korean soil. So what a shame. The outgoing President Moon Jae-in praised himself, which people do not recognize as some story of success. He even stressed the importance of national integration, saying that it is of utmost importance to unite the people's heart as one. But did he really represent the whole Korean population, 52 million Korean citizens? Only did he represent leftist blocs, pro-North Korean blocs of Korean citizens, probably out of 52 million Koreans. Less than half of the citizens welcomed his unrealistic approaches, sometimes producing policies disuniting people into different regional sectors, into different ideological sectors. The path of national unity was severely damaged by this kind of leftist policies. So severe social division followed, and a lot of policy failures in housing policies, in many other areas. So President Moon Jae-in's farewell message to citizens was not welcomed by all Korean citizens. Many South Korean citizens with common sense cannot accept his argument that he did well. So many stories during his 5 years presidency. Prosecution authorities, in the last month of his tenure, they were not so happy with investigative powers, which will be going into the hands of a new FBI-style, investigation agency from prosecution authorities. Many unhappy things, including pandemic and K-quarantine measures. He praised how well the government, dealt with, COVID-19 cases. He said that as the world suffers from COVID-19, it turned out that South Korea was one of the countries leading responses to the pandemic, saying that many people who have thought that Koreans were lagging behind have rediscovered themselves and gained self-esteem. Is it really true? Well, we don't agree with his argument. It was a political effort, rather than sincere quarantine effort. How about the economy and the real estate all the time? Also, a lot of problems with Japan, mobilizing anti-Japanese sentiment for its political advantages. So, especially during Moon's tenure, the government produced more than 20 rounds of large-scale real estate policies, mostly with much emphasis on stronger regulations on mortgages and renewals to stabilize the market, but totally failed to see a desirable outcome. We remember that number 2 leader of North Korea, Kim Yo-jong, but not officially ranking number 2, but behind the scenes, she could be recognized as a number 2 figure in North Korea. After she visited, South Korea, and when she was welcomed with, most, very, very colorful, welcoming ceremonies, and all the, effort, made by the leftist government to satisfy the North Korean dictatorship family there. Even after Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, in Gangwon province, she returned to Pyongyang. But when North Korea discovered that the Moon Jae-in leftist government did not respond to their secret request, she criticized with such dirty words on our president Moon Jae-in himself, actually disgrading South Koreans, totally. Pyongyang has repeated this, old habit, of military brinkmanship, as I mentioned before, by test firing its missiles, causing cross-border relations to deteriorate to levels seen before Moon's presidency. No changes in inter-Korean relations. North Korea has been going on its own way of more hard regulations on its people, controlling ideological orientations of North Koreans, only utilizing its South Korean policy to cement its dictatorship in North Korea. When they need dialogue, they open the dialogue channels, but when they don't need it, they close the dialogue channels, hurting the pride of South Koreans. Moon Jae-in administration danced to this kind of bad schemes North Korean dictatorship designed during the last 5 years. More than anything else, we cannot accept denuclearization effort made by this leftist administration. Completely failed. Even though Moon Jae-in leftist administration walked more closer to Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, moving away from Washington with more pro-North Korean stances, the nuclear question has been deteriorated, worsened. They have not stopped in secret producing nuclear materials. They have not stopped developing more sophisticated technologies in ICBMs, SLBMs. So what's the result of the last 5 years, North Korean policies? Well, Korea-US alliance system has been weakened due to this kind of, pro-North Korean, pro-Chinese stances and anti-Japanese stances of this leftist administration. When Australia took advantage of this kind of, United States Indo-Pacific strategy, Australia took side with Washington militarily and economically. And Australia has achieved GNP per capita of 50,000 US dollars, while South Korea stayed a little far away from Washington's calls for more unity in checking against Chinese Communist Party's offensive military policies in the Asia-Pacific region. Our economic problems, has not advanced very well as Australia has been advanced into such a 50,000 GNP per capita developed country. Japanese government all the time showed very lukewarm attitude when this leftist government sometimes requested to hold summit between the two countries, but due to political mobilization of past history legacies and past history issues against the international norms and international laws, Japanese government has not responded to this leftist government sometimes request to have bilateral summit. And I remember that when I visited Washington DC in 2019 October, at the time I was a Secretary General and also head of the visiting delegation to Washington of at the time our Republican Party, and there our delegation had a chance to visit American Economic Institute, and we held a meeting with Nicholas Everstadt there. And during our discussion time there, which lasted about 40 to 50 minutes, Nicholas Everstadt, he told us that he is the first international expert on the Korean Peninsula question who classified the Moon Jae-in administration as the leftist dictatorship government, and he criticized that at the time in the year 2019, the leftist government of Moon Jae-in administration was moving away from traditional Korea-US alliance, hurting the traditional security interest of trilateral framework of Tokyo, Seoul, and Washington. And at the time, he told me that it was a pity to watch these kind of undesirable things happening on the Korean Peninsula. So I remember that some Washington expert on the Korean question even at that time didn't understand why Moon Jae-in leftist government continued to be more friendly to Beijing and to Pyongyang instead of to Washington and Tokyo. Continuously, not apparently and openly, but behind the scenes or sometimes secretly, promoting anti-American sentiment and sometimes utilizing controlled, anti-Japanese sentiment, among the leftist political elite at the time. So, in my memory, I remember that when at the time our party held a rally in front of the White House there, I made a speech there in front of the White House there, about 7 minutes, on the spot speech criticizing leftist Moon Jae-in administration's wrong policies toward Washington, and I urged the White House there, including President Trump and other steps relevant to Korean question, that took more pressure on the leftist government to change the policy orientation to a normal situation, which ordinary Koreans want to be restored, with traditional security interest to be guaranteed more. And even in the National Press Club interviews and speeches there, our party leader at the time interviewed and presented his views on the Korea-US question, and also the impeachment issue was, at the time one of the top issues that many White House, journalists and some Korean question expert, asked, was impeachment, right, something like that. But I remember personally, I also explained that the political impeachment was not based on the true judgment of wrongdoings of Park Geun-hye government. Rather, it was politically motivated leftist conspiracies which deceived South Koreans. Along with at that time constitutional court, very timid attitude to judge that it was constitutional after National Assembly passed the impeachment deal there. Well, when I was allowed about 10-minute speech, on the spot 10-minute speech at the National Press Club in Washington, I analyzed how important the Korea-US relations is and how majority of Koreans, except a few leftist orientation people, want more stronger Korea-US alliance based on the traditional security framework. Because many Koreans were worried about Korea-US alliance system that was taking apart at that time, because the combined command here, Seoul, they have not done any combined military exercises with the full range of practicing scenarios and with as many soldiers mobilizing their own weapons like in a real battle there. So all this kind of effort by many Koreans and Korean patriots living abroad probably made all the American experts on the Korean question understand how the leftist government Moon Jae-in was dealing with this kind of important diplomatic security issues in a wrong direction. The reason why I'm talking about these kind of things is that because Moon Jae-in himself, as an outgoing president, he did farewell message today to the citizens, self-praising himself, but with such a narrow-mindedness, without full agreement from the people here in Korea. Again, let me say that 5 years presidency of leftist Moon Jae-in administration definitely made South Korean democratic system not advanced, but rather in opposition. On the contrary, moving backward, because they have violated sometimes constitutional procedures. As I introduced in the last English broadcasting, how they pushed with 검수완박 laws to deprive prosecution authorities of their investigation right, with majority seat in the Korean National Assembly, 172, passing this kind of unconstitutional laws, which is right now at the Constitutional Court to be reviewed whether it is really unconstitutional or constitutional. Probably in the next Yoon Suk-yeol government, earlier time, the result will be coming out. So again, let me say that I'm sorry to say that what outgoing President Moon Jae-in said today in his farewell address to the people cannot be accepted by the Koreans, as a real, also as a real result he has achieved. Rather, he has been the president of not entire Korean people, rather he has been the president of a small ideological bloc, leftist bloc, not of the entire Korean people there. So it is a great relief to say that because we have changed the regime from leftist to the conservative, the incoming new government will cure all these kind of political diseases, economic diseases, diplomatic diseases, so that normalization of Korean politics, normalization of Korean constitutional spirit should be realized as soon as possible. This is the wish of all South Koreans, with common sense, with patriotism, and with right historical sense, with balanced views on national politics. Again, as I wrote a poem to congratulate on the inauguration of the new government, 3 days ago, really, I'm expecting the next government will implement all the good policies that will satisfy the people's desires and wishes. I myself, who has been fighting in the Gwanghwamun Plaza in the last 5 years, in every weekend, organizing rallies and leading those demonstrations, with the size starting from sometimes 5,000 to a maximum on a national holiday 100,000, starting from Seoul Station Plaza and walking to the Namdaemun area, to the Plaza Hotel Square, CDO Square to Gwanghwamun area in front of Sejong Cultural Center, sometimes moving even into the Hyojadong area there. We shout the dictatorship 문재인 out and impeachment null and void all the time. Without this kind of hardships and passionate demonstrations and crimes, I should say with confidence that power transfer from the leftist to the rightist must not have been achieved. I hope that the new government should remember the substance of power transfer and how these kind of things has been made, by what kind of dynamics, by what kind of people's sacrifices. Then the new cabinet and the new political leadership in the next government will realize what could be the top agenda of the national policies, not only in political circle but also in economic and other areas. I myself really want to be part of a successful regime in the next 5 years, and I'll be waiting for a call to join in the next government effort to create a new history with a vision and real peace on the Korean Peninsula. Also, creating a new historical wave of achieving peaceful liberal unification without wars, like we have benchmarked the German unification process in the early 1990s there, observing the East Germany by such a long time effort of West Germany political leaders, including East politic Willy Brandt, to the Helmut Kohl's, such a wise diplomatic effort, persuading Gorbachev. They are also making United States of America accept the changing balance of power system in Europe with such an economic power at that time ranking third in terms of economic GDP, world GDP there. Many lessons we have to learn from this kind of history, benchmarking them. Well, I have talked too much today in English, even though there are some resistance from the people that why should I speak in English in broadcasting, but sometimes there are calls from abroad that to have English broadcasting to make them understand the real politics on the Korean Peninsula, because they living abroad and sometimes they are not fully aware of all the major issues going on the Korean Peninsula. So this kind of effort by myself would be some help for them to understand on the Korean politics, not only on national dimension but also in international dimension. Okay, again, outgoing President Moon Jae-in, what a shame on your narrow-mindedness to the last minute, praising yourself without people's approval. Also, congratulations on the newly inaugurated government tomorrow. Thank you. This is Baktaewood TV, Hard Talk Alert. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.